with Carissa. Go ahead, Carissa.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carissa Fraizer. I'm your Redkin Regional Educator for the City of Los Angeles. So, my day to day job is I help support any school, suite, salon with anything that they want to learn about Redkin. So, I have the luxury of being able to be here with you today. And what we're going to go over is principles of foil placement. So, I know that sounds very baseline and maybe not the most exciting, but I have a lot packed in for you. So yeah, we will go over the principles, but I'm also going to teach you a technique that has to consist with, it's called 9 lights. So it's 9 different foils that are just going to give you a really nice face frame. Very beautiful. This is the mannequin that we have. So you can see she has just a really pretty soft money piece, which is what we see nowadays. Your face framing is a lot more gentle than when it was a couple years ago, not so um, bold, so a lot softer. I'm also going to give you some different PowerPoint slides on express techniques. I think this will be very beneficial for you, especially with the holidays coming up. So I hope that you enjoy this, and thank you for being here. So we're going to start here. This is called Redkin's Learning Context. So with Redkin's Learning Context, our mantra at Redkin is learn better, earn better, live best. So the goal behind education is to always keep growing. There's a very small percentage of people that continue to take classes or education after they get a license. It's actually only 20% of people in our industry. So that's a really small amount. So because you showed up today, you're part of that 20%. So round of applause for you. Um, I'm sure you all would agree we do things differently, right? So we all have our own style of the way that we love to foil, maybe the way that we use our comb, um, the way that we apply lightener, all of the things that we do behind the chair is what makes you unique. I don't want to change anything that you're doing about yourself. I'm just here to add to your tool belt, kind of like that man, and to be able to just give you some hot tips, techniques, things that work for me behind the chair, because I still work behind the chair typically a Friday and a Saturday, and just be able to give you some inspiration. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you to be open. Be open to the things that I'm speaking to and talking about. It's totally fine that you don't agree with everything that I say. I don't feel bad about that. There's going to be some things that I say and you're going to be like, okay, Carissa, like, no, that's not going to happen. It's totally fine. But I just ask you to try to be open so that you can receive the information. Typically, when we try something new, there is a small chance that we can have a mistake. If you have a mistake after you try anything new that you've learned today, whether it's a technique or a different type of toning, I just ask that you try not to be too hard on yourself. Give yourself grace. A lot of the times, what happens when we do something new and we don't like the outcome is we create fear, so we'll never try it again, whether it's a gloss formulation or it's a foil placement. And I just push you to find out the why. Figure out why that happened, potentially what went wrong, what could you have done differently, and feel free to always reach out to me as well. Be responsible for your learning. So the things that I am going to be sharing with you on my screen today are not things that are just floating on the internet. So that's a luxury of taking this class today. Please feel free to screenshot anything that you see. If you have a moment where something makes a lot of sense, um, I'm I just want you to just like take a second, and we call that a light bulb moment where we're just like, oh, I get it. Give yourself a pat on the back or like give yourself some snaps because that's a really big deal. It just means that you were able to connect the dots as far as taking a class and learning and having it all come together. So, yay. All right, this is a little slide about getting social. So Redken has assets on all of their platforms. So, of course, Instagram, Facebook, we have TikTok. Redkin Pro is going to be our professional website where you can find information if you're ever interested in like a career path. We also have the Style Station app, which is amazing. I love the Style Station app because you can go on there and basically create your own formula. So you can put in your starting point, your desired end result. Is there any gray percentage and the line that you would want to use? And then Redkin will populate different types of formulas for you to be successful. L'Oreal Access is a great hub. So it's basically like a YouTube for hairdressers. All of my sister brands are on there, so you can find like Pureology, Matrix, Redken, of course, L'Oreal Professional, Mizani. There's videos on ingredients, maybe some short films on hot tips, and just little techniques. So that's a great, great app and website to look at. So please stay connected. Now we're going to start here. So this is Redken's founder. Her name is Paula Kent. Paula Kent was a struggling actress. She was a single mother. Paula Kent is the reason why we have Redken today. So essentially, she started to develop these scabs and a reaction to hair color that was happening during the 50s and the 60s, and she came up with an acidic formula, Shades EQ is what we have today, to help have a more gentle application when it comes to hair color. We've always been very, very powered by science. So you'll see like a lot of our products look very prescriptive, and they have like percentages on them to let you know the care complexes inside of them. And then we're always powered by pros. So professionals always have the first at hand of the best education with Redken and then be able to pass it along to their clients. So this is going to be our 3 founding pillars. Next will be the client journey. So the client journey is what you're doing every day behind the chair. So within the client journey, the first thing that you have is going to be a consultation. There's so many things that go into a consultation that make your service as successful as possible. I like to just point out some key things, talking about someone's lifestyle. You know, how often do they do they go to the gym? Do they wash their hair every day? Do they wash their hair once a week? What does their hair care regimen look like? Do they like to blow dry their hair? Do they use heat tools? All of that is really important to the way that our hair color is placed, which is what we're going to learn about today. And then also, you know, like the longevity of our hair color. Is our hair color going to fade faster because you're not using a professional product to preserve the color? Also, like we know that heat fades color as well. So if your client does use heat, then they need a heat protection so that they can preserve their hair color as well. Other things that are really important during a consultation are like how often is somebody willing to commit to coming back to see you? So do they need a more low maintenance look and they can come in maybe every 8 to 10 weeks, or do they have a more high maintenance look and I'm going to see them every 4 to 6 weeks? It's something important to talk about, because if someone cannot commit to seeing you every 4 to 6 weeks and you give them a very high maintenance color, later on it could potentially turn into a color correction. Beauty budget is really important. So what is someone's beauty budget? How can we honor it? And what amount of work can you do to fit in their beauty budget? Not do more work for less, but do the right amount of work to fit in their beauty budget. Time is really important. So when someone reaches out to you on Instagram or in person, giving them a heads up on how long they can anticipate to hang out with you. So is it just a haircut and it might be an hour? Is it going to be a balayage and it's going to be up to 4 hours? And then also asking yourself, like, how, as a professional, how long am I willing to hang out with someone? So I always say like 4 hours is my maximum. So after 4 hours, I feel like I start running out of gas with that one specific client. So what I can achieve in 4 hours is, I like to think of it like the trailer to the movie. So if this is how we're starting, of course, I would love to get all of your blonding done in one day. But if I don't have an 8-hour time period, or I personally know myself and I can't give out my best work with one client in 8 hours, then I will break it up into 2 sessions, and just, you know, start with what's really important around their face, what's going to be seen the most, and things like that. Your client's hair care regimen when they go home is really important. Do they have any allergies, hair history, etc. Then we get into pre-treatment. So pre-treatments within Redken will consist of just a hair cleansing cream. So hair cleansing cream is going to be the gray bottle on the left-hand side. You can see it says 2%. It has fruit acid in it, so that's what helps break down any buildup that's in the hair and allows you to get a really clean canvas. It's a very, very gentle clarifying shampoo. You can use this once a week. It's not going to disturb your hair color. I like to prep for a perm with that, for a Brazilian, or even just a color service or a chemical service. When someone comes in with like root spray or cover up for their touch up, I need to clean their canvas so that my hair color can do their job, and hair cleansing cream is my best friend for that. Then you get into services for the day. So whatever hair color or chemicals you're doing, you might even just be doing a blowout or even just a trim. So whatever your services are for the day. Then you get into treatments. We always say treatments within Redken are non-negotiable. So treatments can happen on several different levels. These 3 products in the middle, you see All Soft Mega, and Extreme. Those are masks or leave-ins that someone can take home to help keep their hair regimen going and have extra nourishment, whether it's moisture or strength. When someone takes home a mask, it lasts about 3 days and then it starts to dissipate. The bottle next to that, it says Extreme Cat. That bottle, it's basically like 911 for the hair. So what that does is it rebuilds the good proteins that are in the hair after a lightening or a chemical service. I spray this on everyone's hair after I've shampooed it. So we've done lightener, we shampoo out the lightener, I towel dry, I spray Cat all over, and it equalizes the porosity. So if you've ever had a gloss come out patchy in the past, or the hair feels just like it's been a little more compromised, I like to use Cat because it's going to do the repair before my next step. So we would like to think about taking care of our hair every step of the way. So if you do lightener typically has bonder inside. Sometimes it doesn't, and you add your own. That protects against the disulfide bonds. If I do a porosity equalizer after my lightening, I'm filling in the porous area so that my gloss can be really receptive. And then you see next door we have acidic bonding concentrate. So acidic bonding concentrate is going to be the main back bar system that I like to use for repairing the bonds. Anytime you see acidic bonding concentrate, it's strictly for repair. So you can see that it has a protein concentrate, a moisture concentrate, and a sealer. And the way that this works is after you've glossed, we always shampoo out a gloss, we towel dry. We decide, does our client need moisture or protein? Typically they need both. One strand of hair is made up of almost 80% protein, so that's the first thing that becomes compromised during our color services. So I like to say one pump is about 5 ml. So typically I go off of a density trick. So the width of somebody's ponytail is the density of their ponytail is how much product you need to coat their entire head. So I like to do like half and half. I'll do half protein, half moisture, depending on their length. They might need 1 pump of each or 2 pumps of each. You apply it all over very generously, work it into the hair. It needs to sit for 5 minutes. When the 5 minutes is up, you take that sealer right next door, you spray it all over very generously. It sits for 1 minute, and then you can rinse out. So the rinsing doesn't happen till the end. So your mixture sits for 5, then you seal, it lowers the pH and locks in all of the moisture and the protein, and then you can rinse after 1 minute. So it's a 6-minute treatment. After you do 1 dose of this, it repairs up to 1 year of surface damage. That's a huge deal considering that somebody comes in, we do a whole corrective service or a blonding service, and then we're able to repair their bonds and keep their hair healthy and even have it feel even healthier than when they first came in. All right, so now we're going to hop to Redken's lightener portfolio. So within our lightener portfolio, you can see Flash Lift. Flash Lift comes in levels 8 and 9. The first one does not have a bonder inside of it. The second one does have a bonder inside of it. So those are the difference between the 2 8s. And then the Flash Lift 9 has up to 9 levels of lift. Going to be great for anybody that has really dark levels of hair, levels 2, 3, 4, and 5 that you need to push through those pigments. And then it's going to have a bonder inside. So the bonder inside is just to keep the integrity intact. The biggest thing with Flash Lift is it takes off in the first 30 minutes and then it starts to coast and just slow down a little bit, but it's its strongest value in the first 30 minutes. You can mix this in several different ratios. The next slide, we're going to go over that. But Flash Lift is my go-to when I really need to break through those darker pigments. Then you have up to 7. Up to 7 is an amazing lightener. It's a white powder lightener. Flash Lift family lives in a blue powder lightener. I like up to 7 because it's a little more gentle. You can tell by the name it's up to 7 levels of lift. I like to use this lightener specifically if anybody just needs like a soft balayage, like maybe I'm just brightening up their ends after a previous toner, or I like to do highlights and then go back and put tint in between. The biggest difference between Flash Lift and up to 7 is up to 7 gets better with time. So Flash Lift takes off and then coasts. Up to 7 gets better the longer it processes. Both process up to 55 minutes with no heat. So I always say that these are the rules and you can bend the rules any which way that you like as long as you know them. So if you are a stylist that loves to use heat, then just keep in mind that maybe you should start with like a lower developer, maybe mix in a ratio of 1 to 2. The power is always in the powder, so your strongest ratio is always mixing 1 to 1. I personally love 1 to 1.5. If you do 1 to 2, you have a little more developer, so it slows down the process. And if you're using a heat source, then it's going to amplify and speed up the process. But Redken recommends that you don't use any heat at all. So just know that if you want to use heat, you can bend the rules, but you just have to be very, very cautious. And if it doesn't turn out the way that you want it to, then just go back to the rules. The last lightener on the end is going to be blonde icing. So blonde icing is our cream lightener. It's going to be great for any curls, coils, and waves. It has lipids in it and oils and cationic conditioners that just really help moisturize and keep the hair intact. This is the only lightener that we have that you can mix in a 1:3 ratio, and it has its own dedicated developer. So all of the 4 lighteners previous to that will just use Redken's peroxide, so 10, 20, 30, or 40 volume. And then blonde icing is going to have its own dedicated developer. Here's going to be some mixing guidelines for flash lift specifically, so you can see that it tells you which peroxide to use. It actually says room temperature up to 50 minutes, so I gave you an extra 5 minutes, so I'm going to retract that. You can see the difference between on-scalp and off-scalp usage. So the biggest thing here is on-scalp, you can use up to 30 volume. You can mix it anywhere from 1 to 1, 1 to 1.5, or 1 to 2. And then you can see off scalp, it says 10, 20, 30, or 40. And your strongest ratios are going to be 1 to 1 or 1 to 1.5. So I personally like 1 to 1.5. You know when you're mixing lightener and it starts to get thick, push past the point of seizing. So seizing means that it's getting thick and it's raising up. You need to whip past it and then it settles down. They say that you should sing happy birthday in your head 3 times before your lightener is ready to go. So that's a good amount of time. It's almost like closer to 2 minutes. So just something to think about. I know in the past I personally have made the mistake of adding more developer because I want it to be more creamy or more looser, but what's happening is I'm slowing down the strength of the product, so it makes it harder for us to have to get to the place that we want it to because we've slowed it down. All right, so bonding at every step is really important. So we have lightener with bonder inside, and then we follow up with Shades EQ with bonder inside, and then we also have our perfect acidic bonding concentrate, so that completes the bonding trio. So before we get into our demo, so I'm going to demo for you something called 9 lights. I'm going to pop in your foils, and so that you can just have a fun, new, easy technique. I like to do this when somebody has like a little bit of regrowth and maybe we don't have enough time to do a full face frame or even a full like partial. This will help me get them by to just have them be happy, but to also create that really nice, soft spill of color, just to like pop up their look. It takes little to no time at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to mix my lightener and then we'll hop into the demo. I like to foil with gloves just for safety reasons. I'm a little more gentle. I know there's stylists that don't like to use gloves, and I always say what works for you works for you. Okay, so I have my lightener pre-measured out. The lightener that I'm going to be using is Redken's Flash Lift Power 9. I like to mix it 1 to 1.5. I have my lightener already in the bowl here, so you can see the powders there. And then I actually set aside this little beaker to pour in. I already have my pre-measured developer out. I just like to sit them in together like this. So a lot of the times when I know I'm setting up for a blonding service, I will have a couple different mini batches going. Sometimes I'll write with like a dry eraser, 20 volume, 30 volume, because I like to just pour my next mini batch and be able to keep foiling versus walking away for 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, and then coming back. I just like to be as efficient as possible. So right now I'm gonna pour in my developer. And then I like to use a whisk. I know some people like to use a spatula. I like to keep my brush as clean as possible. So I think you can see it a little bit. I'm going to get the mixture going, and then I'll show you the end consistency. I like to go into a figure 8 just to keep all the powder in. Let's see if I can show you a little better. Oh, there you go. You can see it's not really I feel like I've used some lighteners in the past and they start to poof up a little bit. So I feel like when you do a figure 8, it just helps all of your products to stay in there so that you can mix your peroxide with your lightener, and then it gets a really, really nice consistency. So I've already sang happy birthday 1 time. Going on my 2nd round. All right, so this is the consistency that I like. You can see it's nice and whipped up. It's not runny at all. It's not really like falling off my whisk too much. Um, so I like to work in this mini batch. This was about like 2 ounces of lightener. So just for a reference point. Okay. So I'm actually going to bring our mannequin into play and then get into our technique. Okay, so I'm going to move over to the next slide. Let's see, put this up a little bit. Perfect. So here's our next slide. So what you're seeing happening here is we have 3 sections essentially. So you have the side section, then you have the top, and then you have the next side. And I want to show you what's going to be happening. So these are the products that I use today. You can see a very faint line. So there's going to be one foil here. We're going to balayage the lightener on. You can decide to sandwich it, which is probably what I'll do today just to make things easy for us and for a visual. Let me lower this a little bit. Okay, I think that's a good frame. All right, so we're going to do 2 on the side. Then we're going to move over. So there's the second one. You can see here's the top. You see how the top has its own square? And you're basically going to go ping pong from side to side. So let's start here at the first one just so that I don't confuse anyone. I'm going to start here on the side closest to me. Some things that we have to go over before we just dive in and start painting are principles of foiling. So principles of foiling consist of being able to understand your different stitches. So understanding also angles and then the way that you like to foil and put your, we call it like a stitch or a weave. So there's different ways that you can place in a foil. The first way that you can place in a foil will be horizontally. So let me turn our client a little bit. So horizontally. So if I was going up the side of my client's head and I popped in 3 foils, this is going to give me the boldest outcome. So what that means is that it's going to grow out like a sheet of color. So do you remember when we first started doing face framing techniques and everybody got a foil right here and then it grew out and it was a little more on the aggressive side, a little more on the bold side. And we're like, okay, well, how do we soften that? So the technique that we're doing today, everybody gets a widow's peak even if they don't naturally have one. So if you put in a foil horizontally, you create width and you create weight and heaviness, okay? If you put in a foil vertically, so vertical foil would stick out of the head like this. So if you created a fan and went all the way around, these create length and ribbon-like finishes. The whole point of balayage is to create a ribbon-like finish. So you'll notice today we're going at a diagonal angle, but we are painting it on so that we don't have to worry about a blend or a root shadow later. The last way that you can pop in a foil is going to be diagonally. So that's what we're going to do today. This would be diagonal forward, and this would be diagonal back. So we're going to do 2 diagonal back foils right here on my left-hand side. And then going over stitches is important. So today I'm actually just going to do slices. So I'm going to be slicing off the top of my client's section of their hair. I'm going to paint the lightener on and then we'll put it in a sandwich. But other things that I like to share with you when it comes to principles of foiling is truly understanding is what kind of stitch are you using? Are you doing a baby light? Are you doing a slice, skip, slice? Are you doing a slice? And the difference in understanding that is if you're going to do a baby light, okay, let me see if I could tilt my client a little. Yeah, I think that's good. So if you were going to do a baby light and you take a subsection of your client's hair here, the tighter you weave, so the tighter you bounce off the scalp, the closer your weave will naturally be together. Okay, and there's your baby light. If you just slice off the top, that means that no hair is left out. So that's a big, bold statement. Slice, skip, slice is great for low light. So now I don't want it to be as close to the scalp, so I have my comb underneath. We slice, we drop down, and it's essentially, all it is a chunky weave. Okay, and then the last one that you have is just a standard stitch, and we call it, I call it standard, and I also like to compare these to like spaghetti, fettuccine, lasagna, right? Different types of weaves and stitches. A standard stitch, I back up my comb just a little bit, and then I just weave in and out. And that still covers a great amount of coverage, but then it's not a micro slice. So understanding your client's hair texture and type plays a huge role as well, because with hair texture and type, I can't do a baby light on anyone that has curls, coils, and waves. And the reason for that is because I lose it. It goes away. It completely disappears. Okay, so let's start with our technique. We're going to do a diagonal back. I'm going to leave a little bit of, I always say it's really important for your friends to have ends. Lori Zabel taught me that. So especially on a mannequin, our mannequin's ends don't always have friends. So what that means is it's very, very sparse on the ends. So if you need to take a bigger section to make sure that your ends have friends, then I say do what you got to do. Okay, so here's our first diagonal back. I'm going to clean it up just a little bit. Our client here has a perfect hairline, so can't really mess that up. And then I'm going to clip the rest out of the way. So with this section, I'm just going to slice off the top of this. I don't need this bottom portion. If you wanted this section to be closer to your client's face, you could totally just paint on this side instead of coming a little higher, but I want to give you a bigger section, especially because we're demoing, just to be able to see really, really clean. Okay, so here's going to be your slice section. The next thing I'm going to do is, so look, now my lightener's at the point where it's thickened up. So instead of me adding more developer, all I'm going to do is re-whip through this. And you can see it got nice and creamy once again. And then it kind of just like settles down. Perfect. All right. So here's my section. Points of light are really important. When it comes to points of light and doing balayage, understanding where you're going to place your lightener makes all the difference. Balayage was born because we wanted to mimic getting kissed by the sun. So things that are really important with balayage are going to be tension. The higher you raise your elevation, the closer you can get to the scalp. But especially right here around the face, I just want to be able to just paint a really nice point of light. So what I'm going to do is just a V. So you can see my lightener is on the edge of my brush. I'll show you when I start to sweep what your bristles should look like. So we don't want to do short strokes, because when we're doing short strokes, we're pushing the lightener into the hair. I want my brush to be flat onto my client's hair. The other thing you see is I'm not holding my brush like a pencil. Like I'm not holding it with really tight tension. I'm actually at the edge of my tail when it comes to my brush. I have my tension in between my pinky and my thumb, and then I'm going to go in and just lay down the product. Okay? I always say doing balayage is very therapeutic. Pick up a little more lightener. And I can just feel my lightener gliding, okay? I can see that I'm running out of product. I can also feel it. So then I pick up a little bit more, paint the other side of my client's section to make a V formation. If you ever have a section where you're like, okay, I don't really love the way that that's blended, take your pinky and just push it up just slightly, okay? And wipe your pinky off. And then if you want to fill in this, so remember, if you go in and paint this in between section, it's totally fine. But what's happening there is you're not going to have as much negative space. So by having two bold areas here, I'm basically painting on highlights. Okay, then I'll take my foil and then I'll just really saturate the ends of my client's hair. And the reason why I decided to paint it on instead of just, I could have totally just done a traditional foil and maybe just like a traditional stitch, but what happens there is I'm going to have to go back and pop in like a root shadow or a root smudge. I don't really have time for that today. This is my client that's squeezing this service in, so by me elevating and balayaging that my points of light in, what's happening there is I have just a really soft blend, and then when it comes time to rinse and tone, I don't have to worry about doing any kind of root shadow. So this is going to be considered more of like an express service. And then I just fold the edges. If you're someone that likes to fold the end, you're more than welcome to. I also see people do like a little bunny ear here in the corner if they're nervous that it's going to slide away. Okay, Then your next step is to take your next section directly on top of that. So this is the thing about this is if I leave any hair in between, it's not a bad thing, but what happens is the contrast becomes less. So I get more boldness when I decide to put the next section directly on top versus, let me come this way a little bit, versus leaving a little bit of hair in between. You can see right here the hair looks really thick. It's just very compacted. I'm going to show you a different point of light in case you just wanted to play around with different ways that your client's hairline can be kissed by the sun. So you could also do something like a diagonal back. So have your tension really nice and tight. And then what you're going to notice here is that your lightener is going to sit closer to the front of your client's face. And then I don't need to do a lot in the back area. And then just let it kind of trickle down in this diagonal back, very, very soft. Saturation is really important when you're doing balayage. The more saturation you have, the better your saturation is. It's like icing a cake, the better lift you have. So saturation equals lift. If you have any harsh lines, use your pinky to soften it. Just push it up a little bit and then really go in and saturate the ends of your client's hair. If you're ever doing balayage or you're practicing balayage and your section starts to buckle, so what that means is you can see how mine went straight down. My section went straight down, but if you lay down your section and it starts to get like curly or wavy, it means that you dropped your tension somewhere along the way. Your lightener acts like glue when it comes to your foil. Okay, so you have your two first balayage sections of your 9 lights put in. Now let's hop to the front. So when you're working on the front, remember you're going to ping pong. So ping ponging going from left to right. So you can see on the slide there you have 1 section, 2 sections, left and right, 3, and then 4, and then you get 1 across. So I'm going to pop these in. I'm going to do a regular traditional highlight just to give you a different visual if you didn't want to balayage these pieces in. So I'm just going to part this in the middle. And then you can see what's going to happen here is your last piece where you balayage is going to end up connecting with your first piece when it comes to your built-in widow's peak. So let's say that you did just want to put in the highlights. I would tell you to subsection your client's hair. Okay. If you're going to do a standard, typically my first section, I always like to do a baby light because it's softer around the face. I like to pop in my foil I like to fold over my foil so there's a lip on the back of it. I over direct my foil. I pop my foil in. I let my hair do the work as far as holding my hair foil in place. I start by putting the lightener. Here, let me move my client. I start by putting my lightener in the middle of our section so that I can really, really saturate here. The risk that I'm running putting the lightener at the top is that it could spill over, and then what happens there is we get a bleeder, and it's not the prettiest to fix it. The other thing is, a lot of the times people will say, well, that lightener swells. I don't really know if I like that lightener. It swells. If you're using heat, all lightener is going to swell. Okay. If you want your most predictable results, use your lightener in the state that it's supposed to be used. So you can see all of this is saturated now. Some of you might think like, whoa, that's a lot of lightener. But remember, saturation is the key to lift. Once I have everything saturated, I will walk my lightener up to the edge of my foil. Then I like to fold 1 time. This part here, this bend in this foil needs to end up on your part line there. And then what you notice is I'm not like swiping the color around. So I'm not like bending the foil. I lifted the foil right now to lock in the lip to make it be as secure and tight as possible to the scalp. And then I just lock in the ends of the hair. Okay? Let's do one more on top of that. And then we'll do the other side. The nice thing about doing this placement is that if your client is somebody that likes to flip their hairline and go from the side to the middle, then they will be just fine because it's covering all different areas. So you can see that there's a little leave out when we are doing highlights in between versus when we did the balayage on the sides. There wasn't much leave out because I just stacked the next one in. So that's going to be more of like a personal preference for you. You're still going to have a built-in low light when you do a balayage piece because you have a thicker section. You're just doing more surface painting. I will show you another option if you would like to tip out any ends of your hair. Walk it up to the edge of the foil. I always say we don't spaghetti swirl our ends. So spaghetti swirling our ends doesn't give us sufficient saturation and distribution of the product. So what you notice there is I just flip the ends up and then I saturate them really well. Once everything is nice and saturated, then I walk the product back up to the edge and then I will fold my foil and lock it in. If you are trying to get maximum brightness, you do have an opportunity with tipping out your ends. So tipping out your ends means that you would grab this hair in between, over direct it to the front of your client's face. If you need to pull, what I like to do is instead of doing one big tease as individually, I will tease these on their own. So I like to tilt my brush and then just give it one little tease, move it out the way, and then this hair here, start at the end of my client's hair, put an angle on my brush. If I feel resistant, so like right here, it's feeling resistant, I'm going to pull my comb out, put it back in, and then push it back up. Okay, so what the benefit of this having its own individual tease is that it's going to be blended no matter what, versus if I just did one big tease, the tease will stop here. So if you wanted this to have maximum brightness, you're going to paint the lightener up until where that foil stops, and you're just going to saturate it really well. So this will give you brightness all the way around. You're still going to have beautiful dimension because you're not taking this to the scalp. And then you tease really well, so you don't have to worry too much about your blend that's happening. Right here, I will still kind of push the lightener up just because it personally makes me feel better. And then really, really saturate your ends. So flip your ends up, get more lightener, and saturate really, really well. And then my other hot tip for this is you're now having lightener at a lower place, right? So the same thing with your balayage, but your balayage was painted and then it was sandwiched in between too. So if you would like to keep everything in short foils, I would tell you to fold this up, lock in the ends, and then if you were trying to get maximum brightness, either have an additional formula for these tip outs, or the next thing I would do is just tell you to flip it up and let it live there. So then what happens there is it's all getting the same kind of incubation of heat so that it all lifts really beautiful. Hope that helped you. So what you would do on the other side is you would just do 2 here, and then you would mimic it there. So then you have 1, 2, 3, 4. You have an extra tip out if you want it, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1 would cross the bridge. So I think you'll get the concept there. I'm going to run through the rest of the slide just so that you can see it. And then your end result would be this beautiful soft gal here. So see how the color just spills out really, really soft and beautiful. You can see it the same on this side. And she's parted on the side, so that's a great visual for you because we are doing the sectioning based off of the middle. Okay, so you would ping pong your sections back and forth, left to right. And then the only thing that I have to share with you is this last one that you do, make sure you tease it before you just place it in. That way you have a little depth. So the biggest thing with doing a money piece and having brightness is having that depth pocket right behind it. So you can't do these beautiful money pieces and then just get into foiling the rest of the head, because what happens there is you lose it because you need to have dark next to light in order for it to pop. The other thing that I want to share with you is um, try not to overfoil. Like I think we all have done the a million foil marathon where we're packing in all these foils. Understand where depth should live. So like on the sides of your head, where your parietal ridge is, whatever, if you were to wear a hat today, whatever is outside of your hat and hangs straight down does not move. It's just falling straight down. The most movement is going to be above the parietal ridge, which is the round of your head. So if you're going to pack in foils and go really, really crazy, I say do it here and don't work so hard in the back because it doesn't get seen. Other places that it doesn't get seen is typically right here on the side of your client's head. So I will do like a really beautiful face frame, leave a pocket of depth, and then go into the foiling right here. Okay. Here's your optimal lightness. So if you did want to do a tip out, you also have the option to just paint it on. Just remember that when you are painting product on, the reason why this technique works is because I'm taking smaller sections and doing balayage. I'm also putting them in a foil to get maximum brightness out of them. But if you were to just surface paint and do bigger pieces, you're not going to get max brightness. With balayage, you get max like 3 to 5 levels of lift. And then we know that smaller pieces of hair get the biggest amount of brightness, and that's typically why highlights are usually so light. Just want to give you some updates. So when it comes to Shades EQ, we have some newer families that have dropped. So remember that we have regular Shades EQ and Shades EQ with bonder inside. So bonder inside means that there's a treatment built inside. So if you're doing someone's hair and you're getting ready to gloss them and their hair feels a little gummy, feels compromised, consider using Shades EQ with bonder inside by itself so that you get maximum treatment out of it. Okay. So Skylight Blondes are the newest shades that have came out. So you have 08NV Natural Violet and 010NV Natural Violet as well. And then you have 010NP Natural Pearl and 08NP Natural Pearl. I love these a lot. They're cooler tones. So if you've ever used a pearl in the past, sometimes it can go a little too smoky or a little too gray. So by having a brown to tan base, this really, really softens everything. So both of these families have a brown to tan base. The NVs are beautiful to me. They're like the perfect platinum. They have a really, really soft finish. They're safe. In the past, we've made somebody violet on accident. Like let's say you did this beautiful face frame and then you put 09V on top of it and you're like, ah, I turned her purple. Like, what do I do now? And by having a brown to tan base, that won't happen. That's basically like a security net. So we want you to be toning and feeling very comfortable with glossing, glazing, toning, and just love them. So I like pairing them with a warm tone as well. So like a GB or an NB. They're going to live, they're going to be the first families in brown to tan when you're looking at your newest chart. And then that's your update for your shades EQ. So you have 2 new families, NP, NV, levels 8, levels 10. They do not have bonder inside. Okay, the next couple things that I want to share with you for the last 15 minutes of class is just some hot express techniques. So the holidays are coming up, and it's really important to just get some inspiration. So my favorite way to do these express techniques is when someone's coming in and they want to like pop up their color and we don't have a lot of time. So this technique specifically reminds me of like a little Christmas tree. And what's happening here is you can see that there's 11 foils, excuse me, and it's happening directly on your client's part line. So the nice thing about this technique is it has several different angles. I see diagonals, I see horizontals, I see verticals, so that when your client parts their hair, color spills out everywhere. If you were nervous about, like that horizontal line, so you have 1 foil, 2 foil, and then it crosses the bridge and you do a horizontal foil. If you're nervous about this horizontal because it's going to be bolder, then just slightly shift it either left or right so that it can create softness. Horizontal foils create width and weight. Vertical foils create length and ribbon-like effect. And then your last diagonals create softness and movement. Okay, so I've tried this technique. I love it. I also think of a way to just kind of, introduce them to doing highlights. So it doesn't mean that it needs to be super contrasted, but maybe you have a little extra time that day and you want to just give someone a taste of trying some different color. You can pop in these 11 foils with 10, 15, or 20 volume. Let it process while your root coverage is processing. Then rinse it out, do a treatment and glaze, and you've elevated your ticket so much more. So just things to think about. Here's a diamond technique when it comes to toning. So what you notice here is you have a light tonality, you have a dark tonality, and a light tonality again. This is great to add on to anybody's service, or even after you've done highlights to just create dimension. Sometimes people don't, they're scared to like go a little darker, if you will. So if you do like a level 10 and a level 9 and a level 10, you still get dimension with your glazing, and it gives you fun inspiration behind the chair on your own. So I like to do this one a lot, but I would do it throughout the whole head. You can also be strategic. So like let's say that you did all of your level 9 everywhere outside of the diamond, and then the diamond comes into play, and this is happening where it's the most important, right, where we see the most movement. You do a level 10, you do a level 9, and a level 10 again. And then I would probably do level 10 around the face because that's where we like it to be most bright. But I've also done it the opposite and left everything dark. Just for, like having fun with your color, also just exposing your client to something beautiful. When you stay within a level or two, there's not a huge contrast. So when the fade out approaches, it's beautiful on its own. Here's your third technique. So this is called the zipper. So the zipper consists of 15 slices. They have slice, skip, slice. You can do any type of variation you want. You could do a micro, you can do a slice, you can do a slice, skip, slice, or you could do a standard. But what you're seeing happen here is several different directions when it comes to placing in your foils so that it's going to cover a lot of ground. When I compare this technique to the first two techniques, you'll notice that it starts to get wider, which becomes more of like a true partial, right? So sometimes people look at this and they're like, well, how would you even do that? You pop in those first 4 foils, then you would go the opposite direction. And I always tell my client, you're going to go on like a little roller coaster ride. So instead of me working hard and moving around them, I just make sure that their chair is unlocked and I swivel them based on the way that I need to pop in their foils. So it's just a nice way to have different colors, different highlights spilling out all over, but it's a good way to have fun and transition your hair into the next appointment versus doing like an all over foil. This is another version of a face framing technique. So what you're seeing happening here is this is going to be 16 foils. You can see the part line is going to be the dotted line. Everything is going off a diagonal, so it's going to be really, really soft. The thing about this face framing technique is that you can see some diagonal backs and some diagonal forwards. So what's happening here is you're just going to have a lot of coverage right here around your face and then deeper into your part line. So versus what I taught you today was 9 lights. 9 lights had 2, 4, 6, 8, and then 9. Right? This is going to be doubling it for 16. So that's another way to elevate your services because it's going to be times like having at least almost 10 more foils. You're adding 8 more foils, so you're elevating it even more. I think this would be closer to more of like a partial for me versus just a face frame. Sometimes on a face frame, I do like to go all the way around, at least over their ear, and then 1 or 2 on the back side, depending on if they wear their hair up or if they're a client that likes to do this. Okay, we see a lot of people love to pull their hair forward, and that's because they want to see brightness happening. So consider taking these foils and putting them all the way around to give you more of like a halo technique versus it just stopping here because it's going to be beautiful and bright here and it could be dark everywhere else. Or the other thing to think about is when they come in the next time, then building on what you've already started. And then the last thing is going to be the color swirl. So what you can see happening here is you would just use your blur brush or your edge brush, and you can isolate these colors and be able to just have fun with toning. What you notice out of all of these 5 techniques that I just showed you is that they're expressed, but they're all happening on the top of the head. So just think about, you don't have to work so hard everywhere else, or this is just a way to transition into starting color versus sometimes we push people away because we don't have enough time. So start getting in the habit of thinking about, well, what can I fit in the next 2.5 hours without pushing back my next client? There's always a way to try to make something new happen. And then you can see the triple triangle. So the triple triangle has 3 different triangles, and what's happening here is that they're just alternating formulas. So if you were going to go in and let's say you put in a root touch-up and then you wanted to gloss someone's hair, but you want to give them more dimension, maybe consider doing, like let's say you did reds and you would do 6RR and then you do 7RR and then you do 6RR again, and then when you blow dry their hair, they're just going to have a lighter ribbon of color. And depending on how many levels you go, you're going to have more contrast. But this is just another way. This would take you literally maybe, 3 minutes to switch out your bottle. And just have them ready to go when you're going to get ready to tone. Switch out your bottle to create another ribbon of color. But yeah, something that I do all the time, and I just like the way that it finishes when it comes to having dimension in my client's hair. And then you can see here, oh, this is called the Diamond Sparkle. So within the Diamond Sparkle, there's just a little bit of isolation happening here. So the biggest thing between this one and the previous one is that you'll notice that these are now in foils. So whether you did this with color or lightener, the whole point is to have more contrast within these. So if we're going to isolate something and have it be more than a level or 2-level difference, it needs to be isolated because they can't just lay on top of each other and not bleed into one another. And then, of course, what I like to finish up with is maintenance. So when it comes to maintenance, understanding that just having verbiage with your client as far as lead with verbiage like we will do what your hair allows. I want to keep the integrity of your hair. Your integrity is really important to me. Sometimes we tap into a color service or a lightening service, and the hair determines what it's going to do, whether it's going to budge and lighten and push through these pigments, or if today is not the day. And be completely transparent with your client every step along the way. So our extreme line is going to help anyone that's having breakage with their hair. And that could be natural breakage. It could be breakage from having curls, coils, and waves, breakage from having like a heat tool. Also, I know some people with certain types of texture brush their hair and it just breaks off and snaps. And it's just because of their the density of their hair, the fineness of their hair, or even their texture. When you need some more repair, you're going to tap into acidic bonding concentrate. So acidic bonding concentrate has a really extensive line. It has shampoo, conditioner. We just came out with a new serum. It's called 24/7 Day and Night Serum. You can apply it damp or wet. You can apply it damp or dry. And it's basically to have the concept of beauty rest for your hair. So you can apply it any time of the day. It has 450 heat protection. There's a leave-in in this line. There's also a mask. We have the back bar system. So this is the biggest line that we lean on when it comes to blonding and doing any type of corrective services. The last line that you see on our right is also part of the acidic family, but it's called acidic color gloss. So acidic color gloss is going to be your line that's going to help preserve any of your Shades EQ glosses to just give shine. So the whole concept behind having acidic hair care is that it's going to lower your pH, lock in your hair color, preserve your hair color, and just either repair with ABC or give you shine with ACG. ACG just came out with a new oil as well. It's a lightweight oil. I like it a lot. It's very, very soft. It doesn't feel sticky. It doesn't feel super oily. I like to finish the hair with it, especially when my clients don't like a hairspray or a finishing spray. Then they like just like a very light oil. The difference between the 24/7 Day and Night Serum and Redken's Acidic Color Gloss Oil will be simply repair and then shine. So, and then just a little bit on styling. So remember when we're prepping our clients' hair, we have so many things to choose from, but One United is going to be my go-to. One United can also be a porosity equalizer. I use it as a cutting lotion. And my first step when I'm detangling. Then we get into quick blowout. That's going to speed up your blow dry by 30% and help absorb the water. You can use Play It Safe when you feel like your hair is very compromised and you're just trying to get through the blow dry. So think of all those as prep. When it comes to styling, styling products are very surface, so they're from wash to wash. Volume Maximizer is going to be a densifying spray, so anybody that needs to have fuller looking hair. Root Lifter is going to be a spray mousse that I love to use on dry or damp hair to create a very voluminous look. Dry Texture is great to spray on anybody's hair for finishing or to just give like fluffiness to their new blowout or their beachy waves. Max Sculpting Gel is what I like to use to set any curls, coils, or waves. I also like to do a slick back with that. Sometimes I will incorporate Max Sculpting Gel just a little bit on the ends of my client's hair when I'm doing a blowout if I want that hold factor, when I want like a flip on the end. And then Texture Paste is a great product to just use for any finger coils or waves. I also like to use it if someone has a pixie and I want to have more of like a piecey look. It just gives me a paste that I can manipulate that's more like a matte finish and not super lacquer. Then you have two types of dry shampoo. You have invisible dry shampoo, and then you have deep clean, which is deep clean is going to be heavier. Invisible is going to have no white cast to it. The blue one can have a white cast because it's going in and doing a deep clean, but you let it settle and then you shake it out. Don't just walk around with a white cast on your hair. I like to spray dry shampoo when my client's hair is clean so that it can preserve the cleanliness of the hair, and think of it more of like deodorant. So it's going to stop the oils from penetrating through. And then the last product that we have there is Shine Flash, which is one of my favorites, especially when we're doing photo shoots. And I like to think of it as a dry conditioner because we're always focusing on the roots and we never get to put shine and moisture back into the end. So that's what I like to use for that. I also like to use it for flyaways and if we're doing any upstyling. Okay, just a little bit on uh, like our power network. Our power network is Redken's Hub. We have our Redken Exchange in New York, and we also have the Pro Lab in El Segundo in California. You can become an artist if you're interested. You also have authority programs. So if you want to be a Redken Shades EQ specialist, if you want to become color certified with Redken, there's so many different options in a career path. You can find all of this stuff on our Redken Pro website as well. And then Redken Symposium is coming up. So we have Symposium next year in June 13th through the 15th, 2026. It's 2 days of packed in education. You get to sit in a very beautiful space, and there's cameras and there's TVs everywhere, and the artists are switching out, teaching you newest techniques, newest products that have come through. I'll be there, so if you go, please say hi to me. And I hope that you can make it. Tickets are currently on sale. And then that completes our class today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope that I was able to help you with a couple things today. Just being able to learn like some techniques, maybe some ways that you can take something away from the way that I did my application, whether it was holding my comb or the way that I apply lightener, maybe even just wearing gloves, right? But just finding inspiration. If you try this technique, please tag me. My Instagram is Mrs. MRS period Riss RISS underscore Redken. And I will repost your tag for you. Hopefully you get to try those new Shades EQ that come out. And then I shared a lot of cool slides with you. Even as I was going through it, I was like, I want to try this. I want to try that. So I hope that you can implement them some way, shape, or form. I always say if you're nervous, try them on someone you love because they're not going to get mad at you. I enjoyed you. I hope you have a great day today. And take care. Bye.